Good afternoon and welcome to Divorcing in Georgia. Today we have Garrett Nail, local Atlanta divorce attorney, with us. He's going to answer some questions that have been submitted by our members. Just so you know, this will be a regular feature on this page. You'll get to hear from industry experts with some answers to your questions. You also get to interact with other folks in the group and hear their real life experiences. Garrett, one question we got asked recently is, do I have to split my Social Security income with my husband? It's all I have to look forward to.
In a divorce, generally, that will not affect your Social Security income. How much you made and your ex-husband made are factors that contribute to how much each of you will receive from the Social Security Administration, but you don't split your Social Security that you'll receive in the future.
Great. And the next question we have is, how long does it take as a minimum to get fully divorced once it's filed?
If you are in agreement as to the divorce and what's going to happen with all your assets and child custody, if that's an issue, and child support, if that's an issue, generally takes about 45 days. You have to file the petition and corresponding paperwork. That takes a couple days to process. Then you have to serve your spouse, and once your spouse has been served, it's no less than 31 days. So all in all, if you're in agreement, we can get it done in about 6 weeks or so.
So this is a related question that came in. If uncontested, how long is the process approximately? And I think you just touched on that. Also, what if one party refuses to sign the paperwork?
Well, if one party refuses to sign the paperwork, it might not be an uncontested divorce. It might be contested. And there's a lot to that. If you have come to an agreement and all that is missing is a signature, you may have some litigation over whether you have an enforceable settlement agreement or not. If the person just simply refuses to sign the settlement papers, then you could be in for a much longer experience in court.
All right, thank you for that. I know a lot of people are often concerned about the other party not going along with it. So that's good information there.
And if the question was, they've signed all the settlement paperwork, but just refused to sign the paperwork related to receiving the official court paperwork, there's a way around that. It could take just a few days to get them served. So it really depends upon specifically what the question was pertaining to.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll dig into that in our comments some more. Please, as you are in the group, be active. Ask your questions. Answer other folks' questions in there. We want to make the group good for everyone. How can I divorce my spouse and receive support immediately?
Typically, during a divorce proceeding, you have the right to ask the court on an interim or temporary basis to award you support while you're going through the divorce case. That's not rare that happens. Oftentimes, if folks are represented by attorneys, the attorneys can work out an interim arrangement that works for everybody as we move through the divorce case. But if people are not agreeable to interim support, you do have the right to ask the court to award you some support, depending upon the circumstances of the case.
This next one is going to be one on everyone's mind. How much does it cost to get a divorce?
So that's a very difficult question to answer. If you and your spouse are in agreement as to what's going to happen in the divorce case, drafting up the paperwork generally costs you far less than it costs you to get married. It can be done relatively cheaply. I would suggest that you go to an attorney you respect and has a reputation, because these things are important. If you don't get it right, you could be paying for it years down the road. If it's a contested divorce, and particularly if it's a custody fight over the children, it can become very, very expensive. Many professionals are involved, but you're fighting for the custody of your children. It's hard to imagine things more important than that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Since I'm in the mortgage industry, this is a question I hear quite a bit. I'm glad Garrett's here to shed some light on this today. If the home is in my name, do I have to sell and split the money with my spouse?
That depends upon whether the home is a marital asset or not, first off. And that's a question that depends upon a number of factors: when the home was bought, where the money came from, were you married or not. That's something you'd want an attorney to really look at. But the second part of the question is, do you have to sell? You don't necessarily ever have to sell anything. In Georgia, there's equitable division of property, which means that the court's going to look at what's equitable. And that sounds ambiguous and broad, and that's because it is. And so sometimes that means things are being sold. Sometimes that means things are being refinanced. Sometimes that means you're keeping a house and somebody else is getting some of somebody else's retirement. There's any number of different ways this can be approached. The outcome may be that a house needs to be sold. Oftentimes we find ways around that, but the first question is whether that's even a marital asset in the first instance, and that's a very fact-specific and legal-specific analysis.
Next question we have is, what are my rights in a divorce? That seems pretty big.
Yeah, so in Georgia, if there's no children involved, you have the right to the equitable division of all of your marital assets. You also have the right to the equitable division of all your marital liabilities. You may have the right to alimony, depending upon the facts and circumstances of the case. If there's children involved, then you're going to be dealing with custodial rights, child support, dealing with the legal dynamics of who gets to make decisions for the children. So your rights is a very broad, big term, but under Georgia law, whether you are the husband or wife, father or mother, you have very significant rights, and it's really a circumstances specific question of what are your rights in a particular situation. And if whoever had the question has a more specific thought in mind, just let us know, and we'll try to get you a better answer.
Okay, another big question that goes through your mind as you are pondering separation or divorce certainly could be this: where do I start?
I think that if you are contemplating a divorce, there's nothing more valuable than a plan. And that plan will tell you generally what's life going to look like after a divorce, what are my rights given my circumstances, what's the best outcome, and most importantly, how do I achieve that while maintaining as much peace and relationship with your soon-to-be ex-spouse as you can. My opinion, where you start is you talk with a trusted divorce attorney, and you can do that well before divorce papers are ever filed, and you sort of get your house in order, so to speak, so you know what it might look like in the end. If you have a plan in place, it'll also allow you to go through the process with a little more confidence and certainty, which will likely lead to less divisiveness between you and your ex-spouse, which is always a better result.
Okay. Next question we got in was how to fight financial abuse. One of the spouses is trying to abuse the other one financially. How does that go?
So we see that quite a bit. And one of the biggest surprises that comes to a spouse when they're the abuser in this situation is once you get into the court system, they don't have near as much control as they once had. A judge is going to tell that person, this is what's going to happen with the finances. This is who's going to be awarded what particular piece of property. This is how much your support payment's going to be. And if that person does not comply with that judge's orders, that person will be in contempt, and we see people go to jail all the time for being in contempt. So one way to fight financial abuse is to go through a divorce proceeding, because your rights as to certain assets and future support are established in that proceeding by the court, enforceable in contempt. And we see lots of fights because the person who's been doing the financial abuse for years has a very hard time swallowing that new set of circumstances.
That's enlightening. Okay, the final question we're going to answer today is kind of a two-part. How could I know if my spouse has already filed for a divorce? And how could I know if my spouse has canceled the filing?
So all divorce filings are going to be on the public docket of the court system. And we have access to the various counties in Georgia use different filing systems. But we the public has access. We know how to probably get it faster than most people. And we have some programs we subscribe to that'll allow us to pull down the document. So all of that is available in the public docket. The initial petition, if it's been dismissed, the status of the case is there for the general public to review, and we are able to access records that way.
Okay. All right, so thanks for answering these questions today, Garrett. One thing I want to add onto this video is the questions and answers that we're going through on this page. You are not to take this as legal advice. Garrett is absolutely a licensed attorney in Atlanta, but the answers to your questions are very specific to you. We answer things here in generalities so you get an idea of how things can be and might be, but to apply it directly to you, you're going to need to speak with an attorney. Garrett's a great one. Thanks for joining us here today. And both of us will be in and out of the group to answer your questions as needed. Invite your friends if you know someone that's going through some troubled times. We'd love to help them figure this out.